Hello guys, once again welcome back to the channel Rahul Automation Studio. So in my last video I have explained you about TestNG interview questions and answers, which are basically for beginners as well as for the experienced one. So we have covered almost around 13 interview questions and answers in my last video. And if you have not seen, and I have given a brief description how you can explain to the interview about the TestNG interview questions and answers. So if you have not seen that video, guys, this is my YouTube automation channel. So you can come on this channel. The channel name is Rahul Automation Studio, where you will find different kind of automation testing videos related to Java, Selenium, TestNG, web locators, XPaths and all. And also will find the interview questions also. So in my last video, this is the video that I have uploaded only one day ago, that latest TestNG Framework interview questions and answers. So this is a part 1 basically, and because I have covered only 13 questions in that, and it was having around 56 minutes. So if I was explaining more, that will be more longer video. So I have explained 13 questions in that video and a brief descriptions like how you must explain in the interview. So remaining interview questions we will cover in this video. So if you have not watched this video, guys, please start from this video, and then you can come on this video, guys. Okay. So we will start. We have covered till test case, sorry, question number 13, right? And now we will be starting from test case number 14. So test case number, sorry, this question number 14 is what is expected condition attribute on at the rate test. So basically, guys, what happened that once you're writing your test cases, so you can define different attributes on that particular test. So these are the features of your test engine that you can define different attributes as per your requirement. Okay. So now the thing is, what do you mean by expected exception? Suppose your test case is throwing some kind of exception, like some number format exception, some arithmetic exception, right? So in that case, what we want, if it will throw any such kind of exception, but that does not matter for our test case. Okay, like if even if that exception is coming, we will be ignoring that such kind of exception. So it means it will be pre-assumed that this type of exception will come in our test case and we will ignore that. Okay. So in that case, our test case will not mark as a failed test case. So our test case should not mark as a fail, and it will go in smooth way in our test cases, right? So for that, what we can do, we can define the accepted exceptions on the test. So the list of exception that a test method is accepted to throw, right? So this test method will throw such kind of exceptions. So you can specify more than one exceptions also. And if no exception or a different than one is this list is thrown, so then this method will be marked as failure. If other than specified exceptions, you that test case will throw. So in that case, your test case will be marked as a fail. But if it is throwing only the exception from the expected exception, so in that case, it will not mark as a test case as a fail for you, right? So that is the meaning of your expected exception attribute on at the rate test. And this is the syntax for it, that how you have to use it. So you have to use like public void, and this is your test case name. And to define a method as a test case, for that you have to define at the rate test on the, and after that you have to define this attribute, and in that you have to specify what kind of expected exceptions are there from this particular test case. So you can specify more than one exceptions also in that, right? So this is one of the interview questions, guys. So they might ask you. So our next interview questions is, so this is just some important questions, and definitely they will ask you at the time of interview. So what is invocation count, and what is invocation timeout, and what is thread pool size, right? And even though sometimes they will ask you like what is the difference between invocation count or invocation timeout, right? So in that way also they will ask what is the difference between invocation count and thread pool size, right? So in that way also they will ask you. So you can cover according to you, but here is the explanation that what is invocation count and what is invocation timeout and what do you mean by thread pool size. Okay, so basically invocation count is the number of times this test method should be invoked. Okay, so I will write test method. So number of times this test method should be invoked. Suppose you have written a one test case, okay, and the same test case you want to execute with same data but number of times, right? Like one test case you have written with one test data, but you want to execute it for 5 times, or maybe you want to execute for 10 times. And that kind of scenario, it will come like if you want to create, some dummy data, if you want to create, right? And for some testing purpose, you want to create some data or some, some different policies or some different orders, like you want to create with same data so that you want to do some more testing, right? So or you want to create some dummy data in a database, so in that case you have to run your test case multiple times. So how you can run your test case as a multiple time? So for that, guys, you have to use as a invocation count. So invocation count, if you will use specify the number for it, like invocation count equal to 2, so it means this test case will run automatically 2 times for you with same number of steps, whatever number of steps and the logic is mentioned in this test case, and whatever test data you have passed, so with the same, but it will execute 2 times. Okay, now the next attribute is invocation timeout. So invocation timeout is, see, everything you have to understand from their name itself. Like invocation count, invocation means like invoke a count, invoke like how many time it will be trigger that particular test case. Invocation timeout, so if it invoking 5 test case, so what is the timeout for the particular 5 test case, like that you have to understand. Okay, so this is the maximum number of milliseconds this test should take for the cumulated time of all the invocation count. Okay, so invocation timeout will be specified for all the number of invocation counts. Suppose you have given 2 count, okay, and it will execute 2 times, right? So in that case, how much time it will take? It can take maximum time. It can take for 2 times of run. So that is you can specify invocation timeout, like I have mentioned 2000 milliseconds, so take it has to take maximum 2000 milliseconds. If it will not, it will take more than 2000 milliseconds, in that case your test case will be marked as a fail, like that. Okay, so that is our invocation time. Now the thing will come as a thread pool size. So what is thread pool size? So this is the size of the thread pool for this particular test method, and this method will be invoked from multiple threads as specified by invocation count. Okay, so what the means of thread pool size is, see, you are running your test case 2 times, right? But there should be, like threads should be there for that, right? Like it should be running in separate thread, right? So in that case, you can mention the thread pool size also. What should be the thread pool size for that? Okay, and one more thing that is very helpful for the point of view of thread pool size is it will run, it will run your test cases in parallel, guys. Okay, see, you have mentioned thread count as a 2, so it means it will run this test case in the sequence mode. Okay, but if you will mention thread pool size equal to 2, so it means these 2 test cases will run in parallel in 2 separate threads for you. So that is the meaning of thread. Thread means one single thread, another thread. Like you have read the concept of multi-threading in your Java, right? So multi-threading, why we do multi-threading in Java? We do multi-threading to achieve the parallel execution of your program, right? So that is the same meaning of here. It will create separate thread for your test case, depends on your number of invocation count. Okay, and it will run your test case in the parallel mode. so that it will save your execution time, right? If you will run two test cases in sequence mode, it will take more time. If those same two test cases you will run in parallel mode, in that case it will be taking a less time for you, right? So that's why you have to mention thread pool size. And there is one condition for invocation timeout and thread pool size, that this attribute is ignored if invocation count is not specified. So for invocation timeout or thread pool size, your invocation count is mandatory to specify. Otherwise, it is having no meaning to specify on the test case. So invocation count is mandatory for invocation count or thread pool size. Okay. So this is how. And one more thing is that if you will specify, okay, like 3, invocation count as a 3, thread pool size as a 2, so only 2 test case will be execute in parallel, because thread pool size we have given as a 2, and remaining 1 test case will execute after, once the 1 test case is complete, then it will launch the another browser. And if we will do the reverse of it, suppose we have mentioned invocation time as a 2 and thread pool size as a 3, so in that case what will happen, 2 test cases are there, so 2 test case will execute. If we will mention as a 3 here, and here we will mention as a 4, so 3 test case will execute in parallel, as we are mentioning the thread pool size as a 4. But if we will mention it as a 2, thread pool size is 2 and invocation count is 3, so in that case 2 test case will be executed in parallel and one will execute after that. Okay, so that's the logic here, and maybe they will ask at the time of interview also to check your proper concept of invocation count and thread pool size, that you are good on that or not. Okay, so they might ask you. So that's why I have explained you in the details. So if they ask you about the difference also, you can explain what is the difference between invocation count and thread pool size. So you can explain it now, what is the difference. Okay. Okay, now let's go to the next question. And before going to the next question, guys, so if you want to go more detail and practically about this invocation count, so I have explained in my video about that in detail. So you can go to that video. So this is the video, invocation time count, and also you can go to, this is a around 15-16 minute video, and I have explained in details and with the examples on the Eclipse tool. So you can go through with that video, guys. Okay. Yeah. So the next question is, what is the timeout attribute? So you have seen the timeout attribute also. So this timeout attribute is basically the maximum number of millisecond these steps you take. Like you are not specifying any invocation count or thread pool size. So in that case also, your test case must, you can specify one some time on that particular test case. Suppose this is a one test case, and you are not specifying any invocation count or other thread pool size, right? So in that case also there should be one more attribute, so that you can specify, right? Invocation timeout you can specify only when invocation count is there, but you don't want to mention invocation count, you don't want to run your test case more than one time, right? So in that case, but you want that test case should be complete in that particular time. If it is not passing in or completing in that particular time, so it will be marked as a fail. You want that kind of facility for these test cases also, right? So for that they have given this timeout attribute. So you can specify timeout attribute, and you can specify the time in milliseconds, that this much is the time we are giving to this test case. If it will complete and pass, in that particular timeout, then it will pass, mark as a pass. Otherwise, this test case will be marked as a fail if it will exceed after 2000 milliseconds of time, right? So this is the meaning of timeout. Maybe they will ask you at the time of interview questions between what is the time, what is the difference between invocation timeout and the timeout. So you have to explain it as like that only. Okay. I have given you complete detail what is invocation timeout and what is timeout. So you can tell the exact difference. Okay. And when you can use which attribute. So that also you can explain. So it will show you a experience that yes, you have used it. Okay. So our next question is, what are dependencies and difference between depends on method and depends on groups? So basically guys, what dependency is, suppose there is a one scenario, okay, like you are working on a project, and in the project you are running hundred of test cases, but for every test case there is a precondition that login is mandatory for the particular test cases, right? Like firstly you will launch the browser, you will open the URL, and many website they will ask for you the login. Okay, and after login only you will be able to proceed on that particular website. And so similar way you are also having the project, and you have written hundreds of test cases for that, right? So what you can do, those hundred of test cases you can define depends on methods. So one method you will write, and so that method is basically like a login method. So until and unless this method will not get passed for you, so your remaining test case, like your test case which you are written after the login, so that test case will not execute for you if login is marked as a failed. So that is the meaning. So what is the purpose of doing that? So the purpose of doing is that it will save a lots of time for you. Suppose you are having some server error in your application, and you will put hundred of test case on execution in your suite, right? So your all the hundred test case will run, and it will take a lots of time for you, because it will be waiting for some elements to be displayed on your web page, and it will try to validate and verify, right? So it will happen for all of the hundred test case, and it will give you report after 2 to 3 hours, and you will think like my test cases are executing properly, right? But it is not like that. Your test cases are failing on the time of login itself. So in that case what you can do, you can define depends on methods. So it is depends on the login method until and unless that test case is not getting passed, all the like other test cases will not be executed. So in that case what will happen, if it will fail only on the login method, so your all the test cases which you are executing, those will be skipped for you, and it will not execute further. So in that case you will get the execution report early only, like in 5 to 10 minutes, and you will come to know early only that there is some server exception in that, and you can raise as early as possible as a defect for that. So you will save a lots of time for you, right, for your team. So that is the meaning and purpose for using the depends on method and depends on groups. Now, so I have told you about the dependencies. So your method, you need your test method to be invoked in a certain order, right? Like first login, and after that you can execute your test cases. So to make sure a certain number of test methods have completed and succeeded before running more test method, right? So now how you can achieve that? So you can achieve that with two attributes. Okay, one is depends on method, and another one is depends on groups. Okay, so depends on method is you can define the list of methods that this method depends on. Okay, so you can define even more than one method also. Suppose one method is for launching the browser and opening the URL. Another test method is there that is for your login. So you can find both these two methods, because server error can become on the opening the URL itself also. It is not that only it can come on the login page, right? So you can specify more than two test method also, guys. So that is a list of methods this method depends on. So that you can define depends on methods. And another one is depends on groups. So group is there, like I will define you about the groups also. What is the group? So group is a, you know, you can define the test cases category, right? So for that we use as a groups. And if so the group is there, so the list of groups this method depends on. Okay, so you can define more than one group also, that this test case depends on more than one group also, until and unless the test cases which are assigned to particular test group will not get passed, rest of the test cases will not execute for you. So like that also you can mention. So you can define like depends on methods and depends on groups. There's two ways are there that you can define the dependencies of your test methods, guys. Okay, And yeah, I have given a explained video also about that depends on methods and depends on groups also. It is around 34 minutes video, guys, so you can go through in that video. I have explained you in the detail. I have given you real time example in that how to use it. So okay, depends on method, depend on groups, what is hard dependency, what is soft dependency, what is always run attribute in TestNG. So all of that I have explained in this particular video. So please go through this video. Okay, you will get more clarity. So now the next question is difference between hard dependency and soft dependency. So dependencies you can define, and dependency you can define with the help of depends on method and depends on groups. Now the next question is coming, what is the difference between hard dependency and soft dependency, guys, right? So hard dependencies is basically all the methods you depend on must have run and succeeded for you to run, right? So all the methods or all the groups that you are making are like depends on. So all should be run and all should be passed. Okay. If at least one failure occurred in your dependency, you will not be invoked and marked as a skip in the report. Okay. So in that case, your test case will be marked as a fail only. So it will not be as a skip for you. Okay, so that is a hard dependency, right? I mean, every method that is depends on it should be, pass and succeed. Only after that, your test cases will be executed. Okay. Now it comes as a soft dependency. So what is soft dependency? So soft dependency is basically, guys, suppose you are doing the proper login. I mean, there is happening some proper login and all, but I mean, one verification is pending. Suppose failing for you, like verification of the title. Okay, suppose in your test case, what you have done is you are launching the browser, you are opening the URL, right? And you are doing the login. So after doing the login, you are verifying the title. So all the other steps are passing, but your title is failing. Verification of your title, right? So they have changed the title name, right, in the backend by the developer. But that is not the mandatory thing to be passed for you for run your other test cases, right? Remaining test cases. So in that case, what you can do, you can define a soft dependency in that case. Like even though if that particular step is failing on particular depends on method, still you should be able to run your remaining test cases, because that step verification of title, if it is failing, that does not matter for me, but still I want to run my all the test cases, right? Because other test cases are much important than the verification of the title of the login page, right? So in that case you have to define the soft dependency, guys. Okay, so this is the same thing they have written. You will always be run after the method you depends on, even if some of them are failing, right? If even though test case is failing, but still it will be run for you. So this is useful when you just want to make sure that your test method are run in a certain order, but their success does not depend on the success of others, right? And how you can define the soft dependency now, right? So soft dependency you can obtain by adding always run equal to true in your at the rate test annotation, right? So one attribute you will define depends on method or depends on groups. One more attribute you will define equal to always run equal to true on the test method. So after that it will become as a soft dependency for you guys. Okay. And I have given a complete detail actually in this video, so you can just go through in that video, guys. And I have explained actually here also that invocation counts and all. Not sure in which video, but I have explained in details. Dependency test is here now. So you can see here depends on methods. You can define more than one test method. Always run. Soft dependencies are there, right? So like that you can mention. Even I have given 4 groups also, how to define multiple groups and how you can define depends on groups method, right? So always run you have to mention like that, guys. So if you will mention like this, always run equal to true on your test case, so at that time that it will become as a soft dependency, and your test case, this test case will always run. It will not matter if your login or home group are failing or passing for you guys. Okay, so please go through this video, and I have given a complete detail in. Okay, so this is about hard dependencies and soft dependencies. Okay, now our next question is how to define priority on test case and execution preference. So definitely they will ask you questions on priority, guys, because priority is important, and if you want to execute your test case in a some certain order, so in that case you have to define the priority on your test cases. Okay, so if lower is the priority, and that will be execute first. Okay, so that is about the priority. So priority basically define a certain order or the execution order for your test case is in a suite. So lower is the priority and will be executed as a first only. Suppose you are having two test case. Okay, this is one of the test case, this is another test case, right? And you want to execute a certain order, that you want to execute test case first, and after that you want to execute test case number two. Okay, but by default, what happens actually, guys? So by default, if you are not mentioning priority equal to, I mean, if you are not mentioning priority on a test case, so how TestNG will execute a test case? So TestNG execute a test case randomly by checking your test case, in the alphabetical order. Okay, that will check your test case name for your test cases, and it will arrange in some alphabetical order, and after that it will start executing the test case for you. So test and execute in that particular sequence. But if you don't want to execute in alphabetical order of your test cases, and if you want to execute based on your priority, so in that case you have to mention priority attribute on your test cases, guys. Okay, so that's why you have to use the priority. So lower is the priority, it will execute the first. So if you will mention as a zero, okay, by default priority for the test cases are always same. Okay, sorry. So priority is always same for all the test cases by default. Okay, so in that case, it will pick your test cases on the name on the test case name. But if you are mentioning the priority equal to 0, priority equal to 1, so in that case, what will happen? First, it will execute who is having priority low. So priority low is having 0, and now in this case, priority is having 1. So it will execute test 1, and after that, it will execute test 2. So your output will be first, it will execute test 1, then it will execute test 2. So like that, the priority will be there. So if more the priority, you will give 3, 2, 4, 5. So in the similar way, in the similar sequence, your test case will be execute for you. And one more thing, I think, guys, you can mention the -1 priority also. Okay, like 0 -1 also you can specify, because I remember in one of the interview, they have asked on the priority on me, that they have given -1, 0, and 1, and they was asking like which test case will execute first now. So guys, definitely -1 is having the low one, so -1 will execute first, then it will execute test case priority 0, and then priority 1. So like that, so they will ask you questions on priority, guys, so please practice on it. And they will ask you that if both the test cases having the same priority, like 1 1, so which test case will execute first? So in that case, guys, that test priority will be depend on the test case method name, right? Because it will check the alphabetical sequence, and then it will execute based on that, right? So that kind of questions they will ask you, guys, on the priority. But first they will ask you what is priority, how you can define what is the execution preference. If then they will give some scenario where they will define priority like -1, 0, 1, like that. They will mention -2, which one will execute. They will give also with the same priority which one will execute first. So there will be multiple scenarios, and they will ask you questions on the priority, guys. So please practice on it, and it's an important questions for your test and see interview questions, guys. Okay, And if any interview, if any you will not be able to answer the questions, so they will come to know that you don't have any practical knowledge on that. So please practice on it, guys. Okay, the next question is how to execute test case from testng.xml file, right? How to exclude, sorry, how to exclude test case from test this is a testng file, actually not testing. So testng.xml file. So see, first of all, guys, testng file, this is not necessary that we have to give the name as a testng only. You can give any name. Okay, you can give a smoke.xml. If that particular file is for your regression test cases, you can give regression.xml file. So it is not necessary, first of all, that you have to give the name as a testng.xml file. And even the one question that I remember here is that they will ask you question like, can we define more than one XML file in your project? They will ask you like that also, like where will mention the HTML, sorry, different testng tags in that. So can you uh, clear, I mean, create more than one of such files? So they will ask you that kind of interview questions also. So the answer is yes, we can create more than one testng XML files in our project, and we can give different test cases to execute in those. Okay, and we can give any name to the particular files. It is not necessary that we have to give the testng name only to the file. Okay, so this is one of the interview questions also, guys. So now how you can exclude the test case from testng.xml file. So guys, suppose there are 10 test cases are there in your class. Okay, and you have given the class name your testng.xml file. So in that case, what will happen? It will execute all the test case for you in that particular suite, but you don't want to execute no few of the test cases from them. So how you can exclude those test cases from the execution from your testng suite, right? So, and that we have to exclude from testng file. So how we can do that? So for that, guys, you have to use exclude tag. Okay, so this is our simple format that I have explained in my one of the questions also, that what is the format and sequence of different tags in your testng.xml file. So similar way, you have to define a suite test classes, then you have to define the class name. So if this class is containing 10 test case, right? So in that case, what will happen? It will execute all the 10 test cases in this particular class. But now I want this test case, I don't want to execute. I want to exclude this particular test case from the execution, right? So in that case, what you will do, you have to use the attribute as a exclude. So you have to first define as a methods, like there are 10 methods are there in my particular class. So you have to define as a methods. So after defining the methods tag, you have to use include and exclude. So include is basically for adding the test case or executing, you want to execute that particular test case. Exclude is basically for your, you don't want to execute the test case. So like that you have to mention, and you have to mention the name of your test case. Okay, this will be a test case name that you have to mention which test case you want to include and which test case you want to exclude. Once you will specify all that, after that you have to use the close, tag, and closing of class, closing of classes, and close of test, like that. Okay, so that is how you can include and exclude your test cases from the testng.xml file, guys. Okay. Okay, so the next question they will come, like if you don't want to exclude or include the test case from testng file, so what are the different ways, or if you want to include and exclude like from the, you know class only, so how you can do that? So for that, guys, we can use a ignore attribute. Okay, so for that case, we can use ignore attribute on the particular test case, and that particular test case will not execute for you. Okay. See, TestNG let you ignore all the at the rate test method. So how you, at what level you can use this particular ignore method now? You can use in a class, on a particular math package, on in a package, or on its subchild class. I mean subchild package also, guys. So for that, what we have to is we have to use the annotation at the rate ignore annotation, and you can do that. So let's see an example how we can ignore that particular test case or a class or a package from the execution. All right, suppose so this is an example that is written how you can ignore a particular test case from a class. So suppose this is a test case, test one is there, and at the rate test is there. I don't want to execute test case. So in that case, you can specify at the rate ignore attribute, sorry, at the rate ignore annotation on that particular test case, and then this test case will not execute for you. Okay. In the similar way, suppose there is a class and you don't want to execute all the test cases of those particular class. So in that case, what you have to do, you have to mention at the rate ignore individually on all the test cases in that particular class, right? But why to mention that? I mean, if there are 20 test cases, you have to go one by one on the each of the test case, and then you have to write at the rate ignore on those test cases, and you have to, exclude or ignore your test case from the execution. But that's not a good practice. So instead of that, what you can do, you can define at the rate ignore attribute at the class level also, so that whatever test cases are there inside that particular test class, all the test cases will be ignored, all the test methods will be ignored who is having at the rate test annotation. Okay, so you can specify at the rate ignore at the class level also to ignore all the test cases defined in that particular test class. Okay, in the similar way, you can do that at the level of package also. Okay, suppose you have in your project, I will give just the real-time project exact scenario. Suppose you are having the project. In your project, you are having some different modules. So different modules are basically like some different products also, you can say, like some is related to car, some are related to bike, some are related to bus, some are related to truck, something, some different scenario, some motor vehicle project you have, and some different test cases you have written for that. So you will be defining some different package for each of the module, like one package for the car, one package for truck, one package for another car, bike, insurance. I mean, whatever you think. So some motor vehicle, some different package will be there, right? But you don't want to execute all the packages. I mean, all the test cases which are defined under particular package. Suppose you want to execute only for the car, you don't want to execute for all others. So in that case, what you can do, you can mention at the rate ignore attribute on the package also, that I don't want to execute all the test cases which are defined in different classes of this particular package. So please ignore all the test cases from that package. So in that case, it will not execute any test case from this package for you guys. Okay. So that's how you can mention. So at the rate ignore you can use at the three different level, guys, basically. So okay, so at the rate test level, at the rate class level, at the rate package level. So they will ask you at the time of interview also what are different levels that you can specify at the rate ignore. So you have to answer in a way that you can specify in three ways: at the rate test, at the rate class, and at the rate package level, right? Okay, so the next question is how to disable test case from execution order. So definitely, guys, there is one attribute, that is enable attribute in the TestNG, and if you will mark that enable attribute equal to false, so in that case your test case will not execute for you. But hardly actually we use such kind of things. Basically, more things we use from TestNG.xml file, or maybe we use like a at the rate ignore. So enable hardly or less we use in the project, guys. So but this is one of the attribute that also you can use, for ignoring or skipping your test case from the execution. So this is the enable tag. If you mark it as a true, by default it is a true, guys. Okay, so if they will ask you what is the by default value for your enable attribute, so by default value for enable attribute is true. But if you will mark as a false, so in that case your test case will not execute for you, so it will mark as a skip from the execution suite. Okay, so this is the meaning of our enable attribute, guys. So and how, that's how you can disable the test case from the execution. Okay, and I have one video on that also, guys, because please go through all videos. I have a complete list on the TestNG where I have explained all the different concepts in very details, guys. So this is the video how to skip, ignore, or enable or exclude your test case from suite execution in TestNG. So I have given a complete detail and real-time example how you can do that. Okay, so please go through the video, guys. And if you like the content, please subscribe to the channel also and share with your colleagues and friends. Now the next question is, what is the time unit defined for test engines? See, like you are defining timeout, invocation timeout. So what is the time unit for particular time you're defining? So the time unit is milliseconds. So every time that you're defining in your annotations are basically you are defining in milliseconds only. So you have to specify a large number if you want to specify, in seconds or in minutes. So in that case you have to specify in more amount of milliseconds, guys. Okay, so milliseconds is the time unit for test engine. Now the next question is how to define at the rate test on class level. Okay, so guys, you must be thinking that in particular test case, there will be test methods, right? And if you want to define any method as a test case, so in that case, you have to define at the rate test annotations on the method, and that particular test method will become as a test case for you, right? You must be doing only that much. But one more concept is there, guys, that at the rate test annotation, you can define at the rate class level also. So what that means, so suppose there are two test cases or five test cases, so 10 test cases are there in that particular class, right? And you want to make all the methods as a test case for you. So you don't have to specify at the rate test on individual test method. Directly you can mention at the rate test at the class level on above the class, and all the test methods will become, all the methods will become as a test case or test method for you. Okay, so you don't have to specify individually on the methods. Directly you can mention on at the rate class level, and all the methods which are defined in that particular class will become as a test case for you. So that is the meaning of defining at the rate class, at the rate test at the class level. Okay, so they might ask you that kind of interview questions also, guys. But this is a tricky questions. Actually, mostly these tricky questions comes on, multiple choice answers or their first round of interview level mostly. But if they ask in the technical round, so you can answer that in that way also. Okay, so this is a good question, so guys, right? And one more thing is there that if you are defining at the rate test on the class level, it does not mean that you can't specify at the rate test inside the class or on any particular test method in that class. Still, you can define at the rate test on the test method also. And that how you can do, what you can do if you want to define any attribute on that particular test method, some specific attribute you want to define for particular test method, so that also you can do. So you can specify at the rate test class level also, and on the test level also, test method level also, and you can specify any different attribute, group, priority, anyone, whatever you want to mention, so you can do that also. So that's not an issue. Okay, okay, so the next question is, what are different ways for parameterization? So what are different ways for parameterization of test case in TestNG, right? So guys, the test cases are there for you. Definitely there will be some test data will be there for your test cases, because once you're running or writing a test case, there will be some fields in your test case that you have to enter some value or select some value from there. So that we call as a test data for your test cases, right? So how you can parameterize your test cases now with those test data, right? So there are basically two ways that you can do in TestNG. So I will give you just one example if it is there. Actually have defined at the parameters. So data provider is also there parameters. Like this is the test case. This test case is for login or title verification. So for your login, you need username and password, right? So this is username and password. But one way is you can hard code the username and password here also, right? But that is not the correct way, because if tomorrow some another tester or developer want to execute the test case for with his credentials, so he has to come on this particular login method and he has to change the value. But that is not the correct way, right? Suppose tomorrow you want to execute your test cases from the command prompt, so how it will be managed? So it will be very difficult to manage. So in that case you have to make parameterization of your test cases. So that's what we are saying. This is our test data for the test case and how we can parameterize it. Okay, so in TestNG there are two ways that you can do the parameterization of your test cases. One is with the help of testng.xml file, another one is programmatically that you can do within the program, you can do that. Okay, so how you can achieve with help of testng programmatically? So one way you can achieve at the rate parameters annotation, and programmatically you can achieve with the help of at the rate data providers, right? So there are two ways, at the rate parameters and at the rate data providers. So though they will might ask you that what are different ways for the parameterization of test cases. So you have to specify there are two ways. One is at the rate parameters, another is at the rate data providers. And even though they will ask you when you will use which one, right? So I will explain you in the next questions when you can use which one and when we should use this which one. So our next question is how to use at the rate parameters in TestNG. So if guys they are asking these questions from you, first explain like why we should use at the rate parameters and when we should use, and after that you have to write down the logic or you have to write down the program. One small program if you will write how we can use, so they will get the confidence that yes you are working and you have worked on this particular concept in your TestNG. And definitely 100% they will ask you on the questions of parameterization, guys. Either it is at the rate parameter annotations or a at the rate data providers annotation. Definitely 100% they will ask if they are asking TestNG interview questions from you. Okay, so when we should use at the rate parameters annotation, guys. So if you are passing some simple test data values like URL, username, password, environment, browser name. Okay, if these are some simple test data are there, so in that case you should use at the rate parameters. There are some another way also where we store our username, passwords, and URL, right? Like we can use in config file, we can use Excel's file, we can use some text file we can use, right? But you can also use the testng.xml file for such kind of parameters. You don't have to define in config.file. Directly you can use in testng.xml file, so that everything will be on the same file, right? So when you should use, if you are using a simple values, so in that case you can use the at that parameters. If you are using some complex data for your test cases, right? Some array list you need to some Java objects you need to store such kind of data. So in that case you can use the data provider for you. Okay, so that is the difference when you should use these annotations in your test ng, right? Okay. The next thing is how you can use. So once you will specify when to use, how to use, and after that you have to write down the code, guys. So if you will simply write just this code, and they will be much confident on you that yes, this is the correct way and you are using it right. So how to use it, guys? So first of all, what we have to do, we have to write one of the test case. Suppose this is our one of the test case. Okay, so we have written public void. This is the test case and no method, and after that we will write whatever logic we want. Okay, but so we have to pass the value from the testng.xml file. So definitely in testng.xml file there will be suite and some other tags will be there. So at the rate parameter is there, so you have to define at the rate suite level. So after, so here is two things guys. So you can define parameter at two level. One is at the suite level, and one is at the test level. After test also you can specify. So what is the difference in that? So the difference is, if you defining this attribute at the suite level, you can access this attribute, or this attribute will be applicable for all the test cases which are coming under the suite. Okay, if you're and test, you can define more than one test in a suite, right? And if you are defining some parameter under particular that test, so then that attribute will be applicable for all the test cases under that particular test only. It will not be applicable to the suite level. Okay, so that is a difference. Maybe they will ask you also. And what is the preference for that? If you will define same parameter at two level, that is suite level and test level, so the preference will be always given to the test level one only. So if you are defining first name equal to cardiac, and in the similar way you are defining first name at the test level also, but you are giving the value as a Rahul Automation Studio, so the value preference that will be considered for that particular parameter is Rahul Automation Studio. So the test level value or parameter will be considered. Preference will be given to that one. Okay, so they will might ask you question on that also. What are two different levels that you can specify at the rate parameter? I mean the parameter annotation, and what should be the consideration for that, right? So they might ask you, if you are going for experience like 4 to 5 year experience, definitely they can ask you such kind of questions also. But if you're going as a 1 or 2 level 3 years experience, they will not ask that much in depth, but they will ask you about the parameters, and you have to specify how you can use, when you can use, and you can simply write down the code for it. Okay, so after that, once what we have to do, we have to use the parameter tag. In parameter tag, you have to use as a username, and I mean the name and the value for that particular variable. Once you will define, after that you have to come on your test case. Okay, on the test case you have to define at the rate parameter annotation, and at that parameter annotation, after that you have to use open and close curly braces, and in that you have to use the variable name. Okay, for the parameter name, see, this parameter name should be same which is you have defined in your testng.html file. Okay, so this name should be same at here also. Okay, and you have to specify in a sequence order, like if you want to if you want to access in a particular sequence, right? First it should become as a username, then it should be password, like that. So you can specify in a sequence. Okay, once you will define it at the parameters annotation, in the similar way you have to define as the parameter for the method also. Okay, now this this name can be different from this particular parameter name first of all. Okay, but this parameter name should be same which you have defined in your testng.xml file, but this parameter name for your test case or test method, it can be different. Now once you have defined, you can use this variable name to access the value. Like here they have used first name. They are comparing the value that it is equal on. So after that you can use. So what is the flow of test data now? So test data is coming from your testng.xml file, from this parameter through the this particular parameter name first name. It will map to the at the rate parameter annotation. After that, this name will be mapped with your parameter in the test case. So it will map with this, and after that you can access the value with this particular variable name in your test case. Okay, now some few important things are also there in you at that parameters annotation, and if they ask you at the time of interview question how to use at that parameters, you will answer that much. But if you will answer much more in that the point I will tell you, then definitely guys they will be impressed from you. Okay, so one more thing that I want to explain is the sequence of particular parameters order. It should be same that you are defining in at the rate parameters annotation, and the return type should also be matched with your particular that value you are passing. Okay, so return type should be matched, and the order also for your particular parameter should be matched with your parameters name. Okay, these two things you have to keep in your mind while using at the parameters annotation. Now the point that I was telling, that if you will tell this point will be extra for you and that will be impressed to the interviewer. Now, this at the rate parameter annotations, you can also use at the rate before and after annotations also, guys. Okay. Suppose you have written at the before method, after method, or class or suite. So you can use at the rate parameters annotation on those particular test methods also. And even you can use at the rate parameters annotation on the constructor also of your class. Okay, so what is the benefit of doing that? There is a big benefit of doing is that, guys, suppose if you want to access, you know, a parameter value at the project level, because before suite and after suite are defining at the project level, guys. So if you want to access at the project level, so you can define at the rate parameter annotation of at the rate before and after annotations, right? If you want to define no at the class level, so in that case you can define and use on the constructor of a class also, so that same parameter value will be applicable for all the test cases that you can access in anywhere in your test class, guys, right? So that's how here it is applicable only for the test case, right? But you can define at the project level, class level also, guys. So how? By implementing on at that before and after annotations and on the constructor of a class also, guys. So this is very important. If you will tell that I have implemented it, definitely, guys, they will be impressed for me. So the note is that XML parameters are mapped to the Java parameters in same order that I was explaining you, as they are found in the annotation, and the TestNG will issue an error if the number does not match, right? And I have made a video also on at that parameter annotation in very detail, guys. So how you can define, how you can use in at the rate before and after annotation, how you can use on constructor also. So everything, every detail I have given in this video. Please go through this video and have given a real-time example also that how you can use and access it, guys. Okay, please go through the video and you will find it very beneficial for you guys. Okay, so this is done. Now the next question is how to use at the rate data provider in your test entry. So this is another question they will ask you. So first of all, when we should use, so if you need to pass complex parameter like date of birth, right? And some complex string value, or if you want to use array or string list, right? Java object. So in that case, you should use a data provider. So if you need to pass complex parameters, that needs to be created from Java complex objects, right? So that can be read from property file also, it can be from database, or it can be from Excel file, right? So but most commonly I have seen in my in the company, in the project, they use from the Excel only. So first you have to read the data from the Excel sheet, and after that reading the data from Excel sheet, you have to implement in your at the rate data provider, and you can use in a test cases. So in this case, you can use a data provider to supply the values you need to test. Okay. And one more thing is when we should use at the rate data provider, guys. Suppose one test case is there, right? And the same test case you want to execute for different set of test data. So in that case also you have to use at the rate data provider. So invocation count we have seen, right? Invocation count, what was doing? Invocation count was running the test case multiple time, but with same test data set, right? But if you want to execute a test case with different set of test data, so what you can, how you can achieve that? So that you can achieve with the using at the rate data provider annotation, guys. So this is an interview question. They will ask you what is the difference between at the rate invocation count and at the rate data provider, right? So you have to answer in the similar way, guys, when you have to use, right? Okay. So now how you can use at the rate data provider. So for that, first of all, what you have to do, guys, you have to define one method that will be work as a test data provider for you. Okay, so this is a one method that you have to write public, and this is the return type of your data provider method object, two-dimensional array basically. And this is the test case name, I mean test data method name that create data. And here we were creating the some test data, right? Like we are creating new object. This is as return type is two-dimensional array, so you can add it. So this data we are entering in this particular array, and we are returning it. So this is our test data. So but in real time project, guys, what will happen, you have to read it from the Excel. So you will write one more method that will fetch the data from Excel, and you will add row by row, right? One row will be one array, another row will be another array. So you will add in such that, and after that arrays you will add one by one array in another array, so it will become a two-dimensional array, right? And it will, you will be returning that particular value or object, right? So in real time it will be like that scenario. You will read from Excel, you will add in the array, and again you will add array as a array, so it will become a two-dimensional array for you. And after that you will use that particular as a at the rate data provider, right? Okay, so now this is the way we have created the method. And after that what we have to do, we have to use the annotation at the rate provider data provider, and we have to give the name equal to test1, guys. I mean any name we can give. So it means this test method is becoming as a data provider now, right? So one more thing, guys, I want to tell you that if you will not define this particular name here, so what will happen? So in that case, by default, data provider name will be your test, I mean, will be your method name. Okay, so in that case, if you are not defining name, so in that case, the data provider name will be like create data one. So you can use as a create data one also if you're not defining any name on it. Okay, and one more thing that I want to explain here is that if you want to execute in the parallel, right, parallel execution will also be there. Like in invocation count was there for thread pool size, right? Here if you want to execute and you are running your test cases in parallel, right, to save your execution time, so you have to define one more attribute, guys, parallel equal to true. So this attribute you have to define parallel equal to true. So in that case, this test data provider will be working as a parallel for you for your test cases, guys. So one by one, it will assign to different test cases for you guys. Okay, because I remember in my one of the interview they have asked me that if you are using a data provider, so how to make it no, so that it will be executed in parallel. So it will be providing the test data in parallel to your test cases. So how you will make it? So in that case, I remember I have given the answer that you have to mention parallel equal to true in at the rate data provider, guys. Okay, so this is the one of the interview question, because I have not written all the small interview questions, but definitely I'm covering all the possible interview questions also while covering these details, right? So this is also one of the interview questions. So once you will define at the data provider method, you have to use in your test case now. Suppose this is the test case verify data, and I want to use this data provider now. So how to use it? So for that you have to use this data provider attribute, and you have to give the name for your data provider. So if you have specified any name, like for your data provider, in that case you have to give this particular name. And if you're not specifying otherwise, in that case you have to give the method name only. Okay, so in that case you have to give the method name as your data provider name, guys. Okay, so I have given as a test one, and after that yeah, one more thing here now it will come like whatever the number of parameter, whatever the number of test data is there in your array and return type, it should be same mapping with your uh, parameters in a test case. Similar way as we were doing in the at the rate parameters, like we are defining two value now. One is string value and one is an integer value, right, in our data provider, right? So that's how we have to mention as first value as a string, another value as a integer, and it will read one by one for each of the string array, right? And you can use this particular, the name can be anything now, and you can use these variables to access the values for your data provider. And the output will, once you will run this particular test case, the value will be given as like this, whatever you have passing from the data provider, right? So guys, this is how you have to use as a data provider, and it is where, because in every project actually I have seen using the data provider. So definitely once you will be working in a project, you will be using the data provider in a project, guys. Pretty sure on it. Okay, now move to the next question, guys. So I will be explaining this video. I will make this video also very soon. Have not made, but I will make a video on that also. But please go through rest of the videos that I have done for the TestNG. So it will be help you a lot. I have given some practical examples in those. Now the next interview questions. One of the questions they will ask you, like, what is the return type of data provider method, guys? So always remember, return type of your data provider is two-dimensional array. Very simple, two-dimensional array. So object, array. So it is an array of uh, object or string. So you can take object like it can store string, integer, any value it can store. So it is in two-dimensional array. Very simple. Okay. The next question is how to run multiple test cases in parallel execution. Okay, so first of all, guys, why we should run our test case in a parallel? So the answer is to save the execution time. Because if you will run your test case one by one, right? So in that case, it will take a lots of time. But as an automation tester, we are working on a computer machines and automatically it is working. So we can run our test cases in the parallel mode. We can run 5 test cases in the parallel so that we can execute the save. We can save the execution time, right? So that's the benefit, right, for our automation. So that's why we have to use and run our test cases in the parallel execution. Now, how you can achieve, what configurations you have to do in your TestNG to achieve the parallel execution, guys. Okay, so you can instruct TestNG to run your test in separate threads, like we have given thread size pool. So different threads you can specify for parallel execution. So the parallel attribute on suite tag you have to mention, guys. Okay, on the suite tag you have to mention the parallel attribute, and parallel attribute will accept only 4 different values. Okay, so one value it will accept method, test, classes, and instance. So at what level you want to achieve the parallel execution, basically. Okay, you got the meaning. As the name is specifying, just remember with the name, guys, right? See, we are doing the parallel execution. So which level you want to execute the parallel execution? So I want to achieve at the method level. So method level means in a class and there are different methods. So it will execute the different test method, in the parallel execution. Like you are adding include and exclude and like that. So at the method level, you can execute parallel. At the test level means to say, guys, because in the TestNG file, right? In TestNG file, you're defining test tag, and under the test tag, you're defining multiple classes, right? So test means multiple test, guys. If you're defining 3 different test tags in your test suite file, right? So the test cases which are falling on those particular tests will run parallel, right? So like that. Classes means if you want to run your classes defined inside a particular test. Okay. So in that case, your classes will be executed in parallel. It means like test methods which are defined in a class, one class, will not execute parallel. Test cases will run in execution from the different classes. Like that, you can understand it. It is like a meaning only, like whatever the name you're defining in the same level. So you can define at a method, test, and class, and one is the instances level. So instances level, it will create different instances for your particular test cases and it will execute. Okay, so this is about the parallel tag. You have to define a parallel attribute. Now the thing is coming, how you will give the count that how many test cases it will be executing. So for that they have given one more value, that attribute thread count. You have to specify as a thread count on the suite tag, that how many test cases you want to execute. So if you will specify like 5, so in that case 5 test case will execute in parallel mode, and that will be depend what kind of parallel execution scope that you have given. Okay, so it will be from that, but thread count you have to use to run your test cases in the parallel mode, how many number of test cases you want to execute, right? So one more thing that actually I want to tell you in this test question is like, so this is the configuration for your TestNG only, guys. Okay, but in real time project, once because you want to run your test case in parallel execution, right? So in once you will do the TestNG configuration, but in the similar way you have to do some configuration, some different type of logic you have to write for your Selenium WebDriver also, guys. Okay, see what we do, we write our code generally like, WebDriver equal to new WebDriver, like we write in such a way. So just I want to tell you the real challenge that we face, in our real-time project. And what we will do, like we will launch the browser and we will open the URL, right? Something like that. I mean, just you can mention. So you can mention a Chrome. Okay, we are creating the Chrome driver object and we are opening the URL, right? You will specify the URL in that. So what is so if you're mentioning 5 test case configuration from TestNG, will this test case will execute 5 times? Because no, guys, no. It will launch the 5 browser, but it will execute only in one of that browser. Test case will be executing only in one of the test case browser, right? Because this configuration, Selenium configuration of launching a web driver in our Selenium is only for handling the one browser, guys, not the multiple browsers. So for that purpose, we have to write down some different logic for our Selenium also, guys. So we have to use some multi-threading for that, and we have to do some threading concept using the some Selenium session ID, and we have to manage different session IDs to run our test cases in a parallel execution, guys. So this is the real challenge that we face. No one tells that in on the YouTube in any video that what kind of challenge we face. Just they simply tell that this is the configuration are there to run the parallel execution, but we can't achieve parallel execution with that. You have to make your Selenium WebDriver also as a multi-threading, and you have to use in such a way that you can achieve and you can run 5 different test cases in 5 different Chrome driver like that. Okay, so you have to be configure in that way, guys. So this is the challenge that in real time project you will face. But this is a configuration with the point of your TestNG that you have to do. But in the similar way, you have to manage your Selenium WebDriver also with different session IDs. Okay. Now, the next question is what is assertion and some commonly used assertion, guys. So assertion is basically, guys, in our test case, what we do, what we'll write some logic, in our test case, but in the last, what will happen, we will do some validation on verification. And based on the result only, we will mark our test case as a pass or fail, right? So that is our test case. So a similar way, how you can achieve the validation or verification in your test ng, guys. So for that, we have given some assertion in test ng are a way that the expected result and the actual result matched or not. Okay, so actual is the actual value that the tester is getting from the application, and expected is the value that you will define what should be the expected value from your requirement, right? So based on that, you can define the assertion and you can match. Some commonly used assertions are like basically assert dot assert equal assert dot assert equal for boolean values, for string values. So guys, they have given multiple methods for different type of data types, so that you can compare with actual and expected result. But there are some commonly we use for boolean and for the strings, and they are also given like assert dot assert true, assert not true, assert not equal. So they have given more. So just I will show you the list for that. Okay, assert dot. You can see guys, assert equal for boolean, assert equal, byte. They have given so many guys. So you can see there is a complete list for each and every type of test test data type. Right? Assert not equal is also there, right? And, null, assert, same, not null. So you can go through with the complete list also, guys. They have given almost all type of assertion, guys. So this is about the assertion. Now the next question will come. What is the difference between hard and soft assertion? Right. So there are two different types of assertions, like for different dependencies, right? I have explained hard dependency, soft dependency, right? So in the similar way, there are two types of hard and soft assertion. So hard assertions are used when you want to hold the execution of test cases when the assertion is getting failed, right? So your test case will be marked as a fail and it will not execute further. So that we call as a hard assertion. But if you want that it should be executed further, suppose your assertion is getting fail, but still you want to execute your test case, pending steps you want to execute, right? So in that case, you have to use as a soft assertion, and that we call as a soft assertion. The soft asserts are used when the test case or test method need not to be halted or stopped when the assertion condition does not match with the expected result. So at that time we have to use as a soft assertion. So this is the syntax for using the soft assertion. For a hard assertion, directly you can use the assert object, but for soft assertion you have to create a object for soft assertion like this, and after creating the object you have to use soft assert object name, and your methods are same as that, equal method, not equal, or true, and all. So all methods are similar, so you can use methods. Once all will be executed in the last of your test case, you have to use soft assert dot assert dot. So once you will use assert all, it will display all the failed result or past result in your test report or on your console. Okay. So for that you have to use soft assert dot assert. They will ask you interview question also, how you will uh, assert, how you will add all the assertion results. So for that you have to use assert all method, guys. Okay. So that is the difference between hard assert and soft assert. Okay. So the next question is, what is TestNG listener and commonly used listener? So test listener is basically there are several interfaces that allow you to modify TestNG behavior at the runtime. Okay. So these interfaces are called as a TestNG listeners, and these are some commonly used listeners. Basically, I annotation transformer, I annotation transformer two, I hookable, invoke method listener, I method interceptor, I reporter. I reporter is basically used for your reporting. If you want to implement the reports, so for that you have to use I reporter. I suite listener is for your suite level. I test listener is basically if you want to know some failed test cases or some pass. If you want something to add once it is passing or failing, so in that case you can implement test listener. Suppose you want to add a screenshot to your failed test cases, so in that case you have to implement test listener interface case. If you want to change the behavior, or if you want to add some more meaning to already defined annotation, so in that case you have to use I annotation transformers, so it will transform the annotation meaning for you guys. So there are some different listeners that are there and you have to use it. Okay. So you have to answer in the similar way for the test engine listeners. So test engine listeners basically allow you to modify the test engine behavior, and you can use that at the runtime. And these are some commonly used interfaces, listeners that you use in the test engine, guys. Okay, and how you can use at the rate listener on the class, or maybe you can define that listener in that your test engine.xml file also. Okay. So you can specify that also, guys. Okay, now the most important question, definitely they will ask you guys, how to rerun failed test cases automatically in TestNG, right? Suppose you are running 50 test cases in your TestNG suite. 30 test cases are failed for you, 10 test cases are failing because of, like some element is not found, some server exception was there, site was not loading properly, right? And 10 cases are some valid failure. But this is not the correct result, right, for our automation report. Those test cases which are failed because of some unnecessary reason, we have to run it again, and we have to check either they are passing or they are actual the bug, right? So in that case, what we can try, we can give more retry to those failed test cases, that it will give one more retry or two more retry, and if it will pass or fail, right? So like that also we can do that. So every time test fails in suite, TestNG create a file called testng-fail.xml in the output directory. So guys, either you can execute this file, testng-fail.xml file, to execute your failed test cases, or if you want automatically to execute, you can achieve at the two level. So one is at the test level, another one is in the class or testing.xml file server. Okay. So this is the code that we have to use, guys. So there is I retry analyzer interface is there, so they will ask you questions on that, guys, that what is the interface for that. So the interface is I retry analyzer interface is there, and there is one method, that is retry method is there. So retry method is there, that you have to override it to define your own logic or own meaning to that particular method. Okay. So this is the way, and you have to give the count maximum how many times you want to give the recount to the failed test cases, right? And you have to use retry method, override the retry method, and after that you have to use I test result, so that will give you what is the test case result now, it is passed or failed, right? And based on that, just you have to add the if condition. If retry count is less than maximum retry count, then it will increase the count and it will return as a true, otherwise it will return as a false. So if it is returning as a true, means it will return, it will execute again, otherwise it will come out of the loop, right? Once you will define that particular class and implement that listener, what you have to do, you have to define this particular listener either on at the rate class, or yeah, so for the class level you have to define at the rate class, guys. Okay, now one more thing is there. Suppose you don't want to specify at the rate listener that you have written. We have written my retry, right? So if we don't want to mention my retry class on each and every class, because if we want to implement, failed test cases on particular for the particular class, so we have to define at the rate listener on that particular class. But there will be 50-60 test classes will be there. I'm not going to write on each and every file that this is the listener that this class has to listen, right? I don't want to specify that. So but I can define at the class level or in the testng.file. So for that, what we have to do, we have to use we have to implement I annotation transformer interface, guys, and we have to override the method of a transform for it. Okay, and in that, what we have to do, we have to use annotation dot set retry analyzer. Set retry analyzer we will do, and we have to specify the class name of our implemented interface. Okay, so that we will specify, and after that, what we have to do, we can define, we don't have to specify at the class level, right? And directly we can mention in our testng.xml file now, and it will be applicable for all the classes which are defined in your testng.file. So how you can define in testng.file, just you have to define the listeners tag, and under the listeners tag you have to define listener, and which is the listener. So listener, this is the class name. So class name is a annotation transformer. So you have to use the annotation transformer. That's it, guys. So you don't have to specify now each and on each and every class. Just you have to mention in testng.xml file, and it will listen for all the classes for you guys. Okay, this is about the retry. So definitely they will ask you question on that, guys. Please practice on it. and it is very helpful for your project also. Definitely you have to implement this in your project, guys, because I have worked on 3 to 4 projects and I have seen everywhere this has been implemented. It is very useful actually. Okay, so the next question is what is annotation transformer and give example. So annotation transformer, I have already explained in my above example, right? That how to use annotation transformer, and in the similar way, you can give the example for it, how you can use and when you can use, right? Okay, so TestNG allows you to modify the content of all the annotation at runtime. To achieve this, you need to use the annotation transform. Simple definition, guys, you have to give for it. Okay, and after that, you can give the above example for the retry for your failed test cases. Okay. Okay, the next question is what are different ways of report in TestNG? Like you can create some different report case for the execution status purpose, right? To send to your management, right? So there are 2 ways that you can do. One is with the listener and another one is the reporter. So for a listener wise, you have to use I test listener and you can go with that particular link, guys, and they have given a complete example in that and are notified in real time of when it has start, fail and fail, etc. And another is reporter. So you have to implement iReporter interface and you can add in your test case. So there are 2 ways, listener and reporter. Simple. Very important questions. They will ask you how to take a screenshot for failed test cases at failing step and add in the extent report, guys. I have already made a video on that. Please go through that video, guys. I have made in the Selenium playlist. You will find that. But this is very important. Suppose why it is important. First of all, it is important because test case is failing for you, but you don't know when where it is failing. So when it is failing, it will take the screenshot, so it will help you in the debugging purpose when and where it is failed for you. So it will be very helpful. So how you can add that in extent report? So for that, guys, you have to implement test listener interface, and on test listener will be there. You have to override all the methods of the interface, but in on test when the test case is failing for you, you have to write down the logic for taking a screenshot. Okay, for taking a screenshot, I have already explained in the video. Please go through it, and it's a simple code. Simply just write down it and automatically it will take a screenshot in once the test case will fail you. Okay, and another way that actually it will happen and we implement in real-time project is you can also define in @after method, guys, because once the test case will pass, after that it will execute @after method annotation, and you can specify in @after method annotation, guys, right? So for that you have to use I test result and it will give you the result. So you will get the status of your test case, and if it is a fail, in the similar way you will add this taking a screenshot code and adding in the extent report. So this code actually I have written for extent report because definitely nowadays we don't use HTML report. Basically we use for the extent report, so you can add in the extent report. So this is how we implement in our project in our company, guys, right? So this is how you have to use, and this is a very important feature of TestNG also, and they will definitely ask you these questions, guys, right? And that's it, guys. So that is the maximum coverage that I have given you for all the different interview questions, guys. There are total 36 questions, and even many questions I have covered while explaining that particular question answer, right? So around 40 to 45 questions I have explained in TestNG, and that is the maximum coverage, guys. If you will prepare and watch my all the videos on the TestNG, guys, right? And so outside of that they will not ask you anything, guys. Okay, because there is nothing outside of this, right? If something is there, definitely that you will learn with more and more experience, but this is the maximum thing that you can do. So please go through the video, go through my this test engine interview questions and answer video, guys, and please let me know if you have any question and doubt. Please comment in my video, like, share and subscribe to the channel, and share with your friends and colleagues. So please, thanks to all. Thank you, everyone. Bye.